Nancy Thompson had no idea that offering her seat to an elegant elderly woman on the crowded Austin subway would change her life forever. The woman's grateful smile and the warmth in her eyes seemed ordinary enough. Just another moment of human kindness in a city that often moved too fast to notice such things. But as Nancy helped steady the woman when the train lurched forward, she couldn't have known she was touching the hand of Eleanor Harris, mother of Charles Harris, the fashion mogul whose sustainable clothing empire was valued at over $1 billion. She certainly couldn't have imagined that within 3 months she'd be falling hopelessly in love with a man whose face graced business magazines, or that his mother was already plotting their future together. "My dear, you rare rarity in this world," Eleanor said, her voice carrying the slight refinement of old money, though there was nothing pretentious about her well-worn handbag or practical shoes. Most people these days are too busy staring at screens to notice an old woman struggling to keep her balance. Nancy tucked a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear, revealing the small rose tattoo just below her left earlobe. "My parents would disown me if I didn't give up my seat for someone who needs it more," she replied with a laugh that lit up her hazel eyes. "Besides, I'm only going 2 more stops." What Nancy didn't mention was that her feet were killing her after. Standing for 6 hours at the small fair trade coffee shop where she worked while pursuing her degree in sustainable textile design. She also didn't mention that this morning her landlord had slipped an eviction notice under her door because the building was being converted into luxury condos, another casualty of Austin's gentrification. Eleanor studied the young woman carefully, noting the worn edges of her otherwise stylish denim jacket, clearly thrifted but fashionably modified with hand-embroidered wildflowers along the cuffs. She saw the sketchbook peeking out from Nancy L.'s eco-friendly canvas bag, the corner of a textile design visible. "You in fashion, aren't you?" Eleanor asked, her eyes twinkling with an interest that seemed more than casual. Nancy blinked in surprise. "Well, trying to be. I'm studying sustainable textile design at UT. How could you tell?" "The way you've modified that jacket is quite clever. My son is in the fashion business. He has an eye for talent and innovation, particularly when it comes to sustainability." Nancy's expression brightened. "Really? What company? I am obsessed with sustainable fashion. It's all I think about, really. That and how to keep my little dog Sparkle from destroying my prototype samples." Eleanor smiled mysteriously. "Oh, you may have heard of his brand, Evergreen Apparel?" Nancy's jaw dropped slightly. "Evergreen, as in the company revolutionizing eco-friendly production methods while still being high fashion. My dream employer." "Indeed," Eleanor said as the train began slowing for Nancy's stop. "Perhaps you should attend the Sustainable Fashion Forward event next week. My son will be speaking there." As Nancy stood to leave, Eleanor pressed something into her hand, a business card, elegant in its simplicity. "Tell them Eleanor Harris sent you," she said with a wink, "and thank you again for your kindness, dear." Nancy stumbled off the train in a daze, clutching the card like a golden ticket. She had no way of knowing that Eleanor was already texting her son, "Charles, I've just met the most extraordinary young woman. She doesn't know it yet, but she's exactly what both you and Evergreen need." Meanwhile, across town in a sleek penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake, Charles Harris frowned at his phone. His mother's matchmaking attempts had grown more frequent since his divorce 2 years ago. At 36, he was tired of the parade of socialites and models his mother thought would make suitable partners. He was about to dismiss this latest text when his 6-year-old daughter Lily skipped into his office, her curly hair bouncing with each step. "Daddy, Grandma says she met a princess today. Is she coming to my birthday party?" Charles raised an eyebrow. "A princess?" Grandma's imagination is getting quite creative. Lily nodded solemnly. "Grandma said she has magic hands that make old clothes beautiful again. That sounds like a princess to me." Charles couldn't help but smile at his daughter's logic. "Oh, well, we'll have to see about that, won't we?" he replied, making a mental note to ask his mother exactly what kind of tales she was spinning now. Little did he know that the princess in question was currently racing up 3 flights of stairs to her soon-to-be former apartment, where Sparkle, not Fadenia, as she originally named her before deciding an English name would be easier, for her American neighbors greeted her with enthusiastic yips. As Nancy scooped up the tiny ball of white fluff, she stared at the elegant business card in her hand, her mind racing with possibilities. "Sparkle, you want to believe who I met today?" she whispered to the dog, who licked her chin in response. This might be our chance to finally make it in the fashion world, and maybe even find a new place to live before we re-out on the street." She couldn't have known that across town, Eleanor Harris was already rearranging place settings for her annual garden party, adding one more seat at the family table, absolutely certain that her intuition, which had never failed her in 80 years, had just led her to her future daughter-in-law. The Sustainable Fashion Forward event was held in a converted warehouse in East Austin, its industrial bones softened by hanging gardens and upcycled fabric installations. Nancy had spent 3 days reworking her best dress, a simple black number, transformed with hand-dyed blue ombre panels made from reclaimed silk. She'd managed to sweet-talk her way past the initial registration desk with Eleanor's business card, but now stood nervously at the edge of the main exhibition hall, clutching her portfolio so tightly her knuckles had turned white. You look like you could use this," said a voice behind her, and Nancy turned to find a tall man offering her a glass of champagne. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his blue eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore no tie, with his tailored suit, just a simple linen shirt that somehow looked both casual and elegant. "Thanks, but I probably shouldn't tea," Nancy replied, adjusting her portfolio under her arm. "I need to keep my wits about me, and I'm hoping to network." She didn't add that the single glass would blow her budget for the day. The man nodded, thoughtfully. "Smart. Though in my experience, most of the actual deals at these events happen over drinks." He gestured toward her dress. "That has an interesting design. Did you make it?" Nancy straightened her shoulders. "I did. It is part of my sustainable textiles thesis project. The dye is completely natural, made from indigo I grew on my building's roof garden." "You grew your own dye plants?" His eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "That DS dedication." Before Nancy could respond, a woman in a sleek pantsuit approached them, her eyes widening at the sight of the man. "Mr. Harris, I didn't realize you'd arrived already. They're ready for your keynote whenever you are." Nancy's heart stopped. She'd been chatting with Charles Harris, the Charles Harris, and hadn't even realized it. She felt heat rising to her cheeks as his gaze returned to her, more appraising now. "I'll be there in 5, he told the assistant, who nodded and retreated. His attention fully returned to Nancy. "And you are?" "Nancy Thompson." She managed, extending her hand. Your mother invited me. Well, not invited exactly. She suggested I come after we met on the subway." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a flash of what looked like amusement. "Ah, you brew the princess." What?" Charles shook his head. "Nothing, an inside joke." "So you'd re the talented designer my mother texted me about?" "She mentioned you helped her on the train." Nancy shrugged. "I just offered her my seat. Anyone would have done the same." But not in my experience," he said, his voice softening. He glanced at her portfolio. "Is that your work? I'd like to see it sometime." Before Nancy could respond, a small whirlwind in a green dress came barreling toward them, launching herself at Charles. "Daddy, Grandma said I could come for your speech, but then we have to go because it is past my bedtime, but I really wanted to see the princess and—" The little girl stopped abruptly, looking up at Nancy with wide eyes. "Are you her? The princess with magic hands?" Nancy looked from the child to Charles, utterly confused. Charles ran a hand through his hair, looking slightly embarrassed. "Nancy Thompson, meet my daughter, Lily. Lily, this is Ms. Thompson, who was kind to Grandma. She is a designer, not a princess." Lily studied Nancy intently, then shook her head. "Grandma said she has magic hands that make old things beautiful again. That is princess magic." Nancy crouched down to Lily's level. "I am definitely not a princess, but I do like making old things beautiful again. Is that something you re-interested in too?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "I saved all my old baby clothes because Daddy says throwing things away is bad for the planet, but they don't fit my dolls right." "Well," Nancy said conspiratorially, "I might be able to help with that. I am pretty good at resizing things." Lily's eyes widened. "See, Daddy, princess magic." Charles looked at his watch. "I hate to interrupt this meeting of creative minds, but I have a speech to give. Lily, go find Grandma for now." He turned to Nancy. Would you mind staying after? I'd genuinely like to see your portfolio." Nancy nodded, unable to believe her luck. As they parted ways, she didn't notice Eleanor and Lily watching from across the room, matching satisfied smiles on their faces. Charles' keynote address was captivating. He spoke passionately about the need for fashion to embrace truly sustainable practices, not just greenwashing marketing campaigns. Nancy found herself moved by his vision of an industry that respected both the planet and the people who made the clothes. "The future of fashion isn't just about using organic cotton or recycled polyester," he said, his voice carrying throughout the hall. "It is about reimagining the entire system, from design to production to consumption. We need fresh perspectives and bold ideas." Throughout his speech, his eyes occasionally found hers in the audience, and each time Nancy felt a strange flutter in her chest. This was not part of her plan. Admiring Charles Harris as an innovative business leader was one thing. Feeling this inexplicable connection was another entirely. After the presentation, as the crowd dispersed toward the networking reception, Nancy found herself being guided to a quiet corner by Eleanor, who had appeared at her side. "He likes you," the older woman said without preamble. "I haven't seen him look at someone that way in years." Nancy felt her cheeks warm. "Mrs. Harris, with all due respect, your son and I just met. And he is Charles Harris. I'm a barista who can barely pay rent." Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Details. I've lived long enough to recognize when two people have a connection. Besides, he needs someone like you in his life. Someone genuine, talented, with a fresh perspective." She leaned closer. Evergreen Apparel needs innovative designers who understand sustainability at a fundamental level." Before Nancy could formulate a response, Charles approached with Lily at his side. The little girl immediately reached for Nancy's hand. "Daddy says you can show me how to make doll clothes if you were not too busy. Are you too busy?" Nancy looked at Charles, who shrugged apologetically. "Only if you want to. No pressure." Something about the hopeful look in both their eyes made it impossible to refuse. "I'd love to," Nancy heard herself saying. "But I should warn you, once I start talking about upcycling, it is hard to get me to stop." "Perfect," Eleanor declared, with the satisfaction of a chess master seeing her strategy unfold exactly as planned. "Why don't you come to Sunday brunch at our house? Charles makes excellent waffles, and you can bring some materials to show Lily your princess magic." Charles shot his mother a look that Nancy couldn't quite interpret. "Mother, I'm sure Nancy has plans." "Actually," Nancy interjected, thinking of her empty calendar and emptier refrigerator, "Sunday would be perfect. I can bring Sparkle too, my dog," she added, seeing their questioning looks. "She helps with my design process. Kind of my unofficial assistant." Lily clapped her hands in delight. "A princess with a magic dog. This is the best day ever." As they exchanged contact information, Nancy couldn't help wondering what she was getting herself into. This wasn't tea networking. This was something far more personal. And as Charles S. hand brushed hers while passing back her phone, that strange flutter returned, stronger this time. What she didn't know was that as Charles drove home that night, with Lily chattering happily in the back seat about her new friend, he was feeling that same inexplicable flutter and wondering how his very calculated life had suddenly taken such an unexpected turn. Nancy stood before her closet early Sunday morning, Sparkle watching curiously from the bed as clothes flew through the air. Too formal, too casual, too obviously thrifted, she muttered, discarding option after option. The brunch invitation to the Harris home had seemed like a dream opportunity when she accepted it, but now reality was setting in. Not only was she about to enter the world of Austin's elite, a far cry from her parents' modest home in Houston, where she'd grown up learning to sew on her grandmother's ancient Singer machine, but she was also facing eviction in 3 weeks with nowhere to go. The contrast was dizzying. "What am I doing, Sparkle?" she sighed, sinking onto the bed beside the little dog, who immediately crawled into her lap. "These people live in a different universe." Her phone pinged with a text message. It was, from an unknown number. "Lily wants to know if Sparkle likes bacon. This is Charles, by the way." The casual message made her smile despite her anxiety. She texted back, "She pretends to be picky, but secretly loves everything. This is Nancy, by the way." 3 dots appeared immediately, then, "Good to know. Also, Mother insists I tell you this is casual brunch, so don't fatigue dress up." Her words, not mine. Nancy looked at the growing pile of rejected outfits and laughed. She finally settled on a simple sundress she'd made from vintage fabric, paired with her most comfortable sandals. After gathering Sparkle, her portfolio, and a bag of fabric scraps for Lily's doll clothes project, she ordered a rideshare to the address Charles had sent. The Harris home wasn't the modernist mansion she'd imagined, but rather a charming historic house in West Austin, surrounded by mature oak trees and lush gardens. It was certainly luxurious, but in an understated way that spoke of old money and quiet confidence. Lily burst through the front door before Nancy had even made it up the walkway. "You came, and you brought your magic dog," she exclaimed, immediately dropping to her knees to greet Sparkle, who responded with enthusiastic licks. Charles appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. His casual appearance in jeans and a simple Henley shirt somehow made him more handsome than he had been in his tailored suit. "Sorry about the reception committee," he said with a smile. "Someone has been watching the window for the past hour." I deem flattered," Nancy replied, trying to ignore the way her heart skipped at his smile. "I brought materials for our project," she added to Lily, holding up her bag of fabric scraps. "Excellent timing," came Eleanor's voice as she joined them at the door. "Charles just finished making the waffles. Come in, dear." The interior of the house was just as Nancy had somehow known it would be. Elegant but lived in, with family photos mixed among what looked like museum-worthy art pieces. The kitchen was surprisingly cozy, with a large island where plates of fresh waffles, fruit and bacon awaited. "This looks amazing," Nancy said, setting down her things and letting Sparkle explore under Lily's supervision. "Charles stress cooks," Eleanor explained with a fond glance at her son. "The bigger the business deal, the more elaborate the meal." Charles rolled his eyes good-naturedly. "I just like cooking. It's creative, but with immediate results, unlike the fashion business, where everything takes forever." He handed Nancy a plate. "Coffee, tea, juice." "Coffee, please. Black." She accepted the mug he offered, their fingers brushing again with that same electric tingle she felt at the event. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Nancy had expected. Lily dominated much of it, peppering Nancy with questions about her design work and her dog. But gradually, Nancy found herself drawn into more substantive discussions with Charles about the challenges facing sustainable fashion. "The problem isn't just manufacturing," Nancy explained, warming to her favorite topic. "It is the whole mindset around clothing. Fast fashion has conditioned people to see clothes as disposable when they should be investments." Charles nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly the cultural shift we were trying to encourage at Evergreen, but it is an uphill battle when competitors can produce trendy items for 1/10 of the cost." Maybe the answer isn't tea competing on their terms," Nancy suggested. "What if—" She was interrupted by Lily tugging at her sleeve. "Can we make doll clothes now, please?" Nancy laughed. "Of course, fashion theory can wait." They cleared the table and set up Nancy Edies fabrics and small sewing kit. Charles watched in amazement as Nancy patiently showed Lily how to trace simple patterns for doll-sized garments onto fabric scraps. "You're really good with her," he said quietly, as Eleanor conveniently found a reason to retreat to the garden. Nancy shrugged. "I used to teach summer classes at the community center. Kids are actually easier to teach than adults. They don't have preconceived notions about what they can do." Charles' gaze lingered on her face. "You are not what I expected." "Nancy Thompson." She looked up from helping Lily cut a small piece of fabric. "What did you expect?" "Honestly, I thought you to be another social climber Mother found to throw at me." His bluntness surprised them both. "Sorry, that sounded terrible." But Nancy laughed. "Does that happen a lot? Women being thrown at you?" "More than you believe in," he admitted. "Hazards of being a widower with a successful company, I guess." "I thought you were divorced," the words slipped out before Nancy could stop them. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." A shadow crossed his face. "No, it's fine. My wife, Lisa, died when Lily was 2. Car accident." He lowered his voice so Lily couldn't hear. "The press always reported it as a divorce because that is what my PR team thought would be easier. Less questions, less pity." Nancy reached out impulsively and squeezed his hand. "I'm so sorry." He turned his hand to hold hers for a brief moment, then released it. "It has been 4 years. We're doing okay now, right, Lilybug?" Lily looked up from her careful cutting. "Right, Daddy. But Nancy makes it even more okay." The simple statement hung in the air between them. Charles' eyes met Nancy's, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of possibility that both thrilled and terrified her. The moment was broken by Sparkle's sudden excited barking at the back door. Eleanor had returned from the garden with an armful of flowers. "For your apartment, dear," she explained, handing them to Nancy. "Fresh flowers make any space more lovely." Nancy accepted them with a mixture of gratitude and sudden sadness. "They were beautiful." "Thank you, though I am not sure how much longer I'll have that apartment. My building being converted to luxury condos." When do you have to leave?" Charles asked, his brow furrowing. 3 weeks, Nancy admitted. "I'd have been looking, but Austin's rental market is brutal right now, especially with a dog." Eleanor and Charles exchanged a look that Nancy couldn't interpret. "What a coincidence," Eleanor said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Charles, don't you still own that condo near the university? The one you bought as an investment?" Charles shot his mother a look that clearly said, "Subtle, Mom," before turning to Nancy. "I do have a place that's sitting empty. It's nothing special, just a small 2-bedroom I bought years ago when property near campus was affordable." Nancy stiffened. "I couldn't possibly. It's not charity," he said quickly, reading her expression. "And you pay rent, of course. Market rate for a grad student budget, not downtown luxury prices. And honestly, you'd be doing me a favor, having someone trustworthy there instead of leaving it vacant. Nancy hesitated. The offer was tempting, too. Tempting? I don't know. Please, Nancy, Lily chimed in, looking up with pleading eyes. If you live in Daddy S. house, you can teach me princess magic more often. Nancy looked from Lily S. hopeful face to Charles S. carefully neutral expression to Eleanor S. barely concealed satisfaction. She was falling into something here, something that went well beyond professional networking or even friendship. The rational part of her brain warned her to step back, to maintain boundaries with a man who could potentially employ her someday. But another part, the part that had felt that undeniable connection from their first meeting, pushed her forward. Okay, she heard herself saying, but I insist on a proper lease agreement and market-appropriate rent. Deal, Charles said, a smile breaking across his face. And maybe in exchange, you can help me with something I've been working on. A new line of children S clothes for Evergreen that focuses on adaptability and longevity, growing with the child instead of being quickly outgrown. Nancy's eyes widened. This was exactly the kind of project she dreamed of working on. That sounds incredible. Wonderful, Eleanor declared, clapping her hands together. That S settled then. More coffee, anyone? As they returned to their sewing project, Nancy couldn't shake the feeling that she just stepped onto a path that would change her life completely. What she didn't know was that Charles was thinking the exact same thing, and that Eleanor was already mentally redecorating the condo to make it perfect for not just Nancy and Sparkle, but eventually for Lily Sis weekend visits as well. The condo was nothing like Nancy had expected. Located in a quiet complex near the university, it was modestly sized but thoughtfully designed, with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. Charles had described it as nothing special, but to Nancy, who had been living in a rundown studio apartment, it felt like luxury. "You are sure about the rent?" she asked for the third time, as Charles handed her the keys. They had just signed a formal lease agreement that his lawyer had drawn up. Charles had insisted on everything being official and above board. "It seems too low." "It is fair for the area and for a student's budget," he assured her. "Remember, I bought this place years ago before prices skyrocketed. My mortgage is practically nothing." Nancy ran her hand along the kitchen counter. Actual stone, not the laminate she was used to. Sparkle was already exploring, her nails clicking on the hardwood floors. "I still feel like I am taking advantage." Charles leaned against the doorframe, watching her. In the 2 weeks since their brunch, they'd seen each other several times. Coffee meetings to discuss his children's clothing line idea, dinners with Lily, who had become thoroughly attached to both Nancy and Sparkle, and even one emergency rescue when Nancy's ancient car had broken down on the highway. Each encounter had deepened whatever this connection between them was, but both had carefully maintained a professional veneer. Charles was still Nancy's potential employer and mentor. Nothing more could happen, no matter how her heart raced when he entered a room. "If anyone's taking advantage, it's me," Charles said finally. "I've basically hijacked your thesis project and turned it into Evergreen's next big launch." Nancy shook her head. "Are you kidding? Working with you on this, children? I guess line is the opportunity of a lifetime. My professors are already impressed that I have a major brand interested in my concepts." Speaking of which," Charles said, pulling a folder from his bag, "I drafted the contract for your design consultancy, officially hiring you as an independent contractor for Evergreen while you finish your degree." Nancy accepted the folder with hands that trembled slightly. This was it, her first real professional design job with a company she admired. She opened it and her eyes widened at the compensation figure. This is... Charles, this is too much. Und this industry standard for the expertise you were bringing, he replied firmly. I don't underpay people, Nancy, regardless of personal connections. The phrase hung between them. Personal connections. What exactly were they to each? Other now? Colleagues? Friends? Something hovering on the edge of more? She was saved from analyzing it further when her phone rang, her mother calling from Houston. Sorry, I should take this, she said, stepping into what would be her new bedroom for privacy. Nancy, honey, how is the apartment hunting going? Her mother's cheerful voice came through the line. Actually, Mom, I found a place, Nancy replied, sinking onto the window seat. It is a condo near campus, really nice, and... She hesitated, unsure how to explain, and it is owned by someone I've been working with professionally. He is renting it to me at a fair price. He... Her mother's tone sharpened with interest. Anyone special? Nancy glanced toward the door, lowering her voice. It's complicated, Mom. He... Charles Harris. The Charles Harris? The sustainable fashion mogul? Her mother's voice rose in excitement. Honey, that's amazing. How did you meet him? Are you working for Evergreen now? It is a long story involving his mother, the subway, and his 6-year-old daughter. And thinking I am a princess? Nancy said, smiling at how absurd it sounded. And yes, I am consulting on a children's line while I finish my degree. Nancy Elizabeth Thompson, her mother said with mock severity, you have been holding out on me. I want every detail. As Nancy filled her mother in on the events of the past month, she realized how fairy tale-like it all sounded. Girl meets boy, smother on subway. Boy turns out to be successful businessman. Girl gets dream job and affordable housing. But what came next in the story? That was the chapter she couldn't predict. When she emerged from the bedroom 10 minutes later, Charles was on his hands and knees in the living room, apparently having been recruited by Sparkle for a game of tug-of-war with a rope toy. His suit jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, and he was laughing as the tiny dog growled fiercely at her end of the rope. The sight made Nancy's heart do a dangerous flip. This man, this successful, intelligent, kind man who could have anyone, was playing with her dog on the floor like it was the most natural thing in the world. He looked up, slightly embarrassed to be caught. She is very persuasive, he said, releasing the rope, which caused Sparkle to tumble backward with a surprised yip. She is manipulative is what she is, Nancy replied with a laugh, helping him to his feet. They ended up standing closer than she'd intended, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. For a moment, neither moved. Nancy felt certain he was going to kiss her, and even more certain that she would let him. Then his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket, breaking the spell. He stepped back, checking the message. Lily is done with her playdate early, he said, his voice slightly rough. Now I should go pick her up. Nancy nodded, both relieved and disappointed. Of course, and I should start unpacking. Charles gathered his jacket and the contract folder, which Nancy had set on the counter. Look that over. Make any changes you want, and we can discuss it Monday at the office. He paused at the door. Will you and Sparkle join us for dinner tomorrow? Lily wanted to show you her progress on those doll clothes. We love to, Nancy replied, knowing she should probably maintain more professional distance, but unable to resist. After he left, Nancy sank onto the couch, Sparkle immediately jumping into her lap. What am I doing, Sparkle? She whispered. This is my big professional break. I can mess it up by falling for my boss. But as she looked around at the beautiful space that was now her home, a home that would allow her to finish her degree without financial panic for the first time, she knew it was already too late. She was falling, and falling hard. Across town, Charles was having a similar internal debate as he drove to pick up Lily. He hadn't felt this way about anyone since Lisa, and the intensity of it frightened him. Nancy was talented, kind, and brought a light into his and Lily's life that he hadn't realized was missing. But she was also 10 years younger, just starting her career, and now effectively his employee. The professional complications alone should have been enough to make him keep his distance. But every time he resolved to maintain boundaries, he found himself inventing reasons to see her again. When he arrived at the birthday party where Lily had been playing, he found his daughter deep in conversation with her friend mother. And Nancy is teaching me to make clothes just like she does, Lily was saying enthusiastically. She is not really a princess, but she does have magic hands that make beautiful things. She sounds wonderful, the woman replied, smiling at Charles as he approached. Lily has been telling me all about your new friend. Nancy, as our special person, Lily declared with a child as innocent certainty. Right, Daddy? Charles felt himself flush. Nancy is a very talented designer who's helping with my new children's line, he said carefully. But as they drove home, Lily's words echoed in his mind. Your new friend, our special person. The line between personal and professional was blurring beyond recognition, and the most alarming part was how little he wanted to redraw it. Meanwhile, Eleanor Harris sat in her garden, sipping tea and smiling to herself as she received text. Updates from both Charles and Nancy about the move-in day. Her plan was unfolding perfectly, though neither of them realized they were following a script she'd begun writing the moment Nancy had offered her seat on the subway. Some things, she murmured to herself, are simply meant to be. They just need a little push in the right direction. The Sustainable Fashion Forward Showcase was the most prestigious event on Austin's design calendar, and this year, Evergreen Apparel's booth was drawing unprecedented attention. The Grow With Me Children's collection, featuring innovative designs that adjusted to fit children through multiple growth stages, had become the talk of the industry since its soft launch 3 months earlier. Nancy stood to the side of the booth, watching as Charles fielded questions from industry insiders and press. She still couldn't quite believe that her thesis project had evolved into this reality, a commercially viable collection that was already generating pre-orders from eco-conscious parents nationwide. You should be up there with him, came Eleanor's voice as she appeared at Nancy's side, elegant as always in a simple linen dress. This is as much your success as his. Nancy shook her head. It is his company. I am just the designer. Head designer for the children's division, Eleanor corrected, gently adjusting the lapel of Nancy's blazer, a custom piece from Evergreen's upcoming fall collection that Charles had insisted she wear for the event. My son doesn't give titles like that lightly, you know. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Nancy had graduated with honors, moved into Charles's condo, and transitioned from consultant to full-time employee at Evergreen. The children's line had exceeded all expectations, and Nancy's innovative approach to sustainable, adaptable clothing had caught the attention of the wider fashion world. What hadn't changed, however, was the careful dance between her and Charles. Their connection had only deepened. Late nights working on designs, weekend outings with Lily that felt increasingly like family time, quiet moments when the electricity between them was almost unbearable. Yet neither had crossed the invisible line they'd drawn, maintaining the fiction that they were merely colleagues who happened to be close friends. He's afraid, Eleanor said suddenly, breaking into Nancy's thoughts. Afraid? Charles? Nancy looked at the confident man commanding the attention of everyone around him. I don't think so. Eleanor's knowing eyes met hers, afraid of losing you, professionally and personally. Nancy felt her cheeks warm. Mrs. Harris, Eleanor, dear, how many times must I remind you? Eleanor, Nancy amended. There is nothing personal between Charles and me. He's my boss. The older woman raised an elegant eyebrow. Is that what you tell yourself at night? Because I've never seen two people work harder to deny the obvious. She patted Nancy's hand. He hasn't looked at anyone the way he looks at you since Lisa, and Lily adores you. Before Nancy could formulate a response, Lily herself came bounding up, resplendent in one of the showcase pieces from the collection, a dress with cleverly concealed adjustable seams that could expand as she grew. Nancy, the lady from the magazine wants to take my picture in the dress you made me, she exclaimed, grabbing Nancy's hand. You have to come too. As Nancy allowed herself to be pulled toward the photographer, she caught Charles watching. At them, an unguarded tenderness in his expression that made her breath catch. For that brief moment before he noticed her looking, all his careful professional barriers were down. The photo shoot was a blur of activity, with Lily hamming it up for the camera, while Nancy explained the innovative features of the design. When they finished, Charles joined them, his hand briefly touching the small of Nancy's back in a gesture that felt both casual and intimate. They want to feature you in the article, he told her quietly. The brilliant young designer revolutionizing children's sustainable fashion. Nancy felt a flutter of panic. But I've only been doing this professionally for 6 months. And in that time, you've created a line that's about to change how parents think about children's clothing, he countered. Take the win, Nancy. You've earned it. The rest of the showcase passed in a whirlwind of introductions, congratulations, and business cards pressed into her hand. By the time the event wound down, Nancy's feet were aching in her heels, and her cheeks hurt from smiling. She found a quiet corner to catch her breath, watching as the last industry insiders networked over champagne. Oh, quite a day, came Charles's voice as he appeared beside her, offering a glass of water. He'd loosened his tie and looked slightly more relaxed now that the main presentations were over. Overwhelming, Nancy admitted, accepting the water gratefully. But amazing. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Charles leaned against the wall beside her, their shoulders almost touching. Best business decision I ever made. The pre-orders are already double our projections. Is that all it was? A business decision? The words slipped out before Nancy could stop them, emboldened perhaps by the success of the day or the exhaustion breaking down her careful filters. Charles turned to look at her directly, his expression serious. No, it wasn't it. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. 6 months of careful distance, of professional boundaries maintained despite growing feelings, culminated in this moment. I should have recused myself, Charles said softly. Ask someone else to oversee your work. Set clearer boundaries. Why didn't you? Nancy asked, her heart pounding. Because I couldn't bear the thought of not working with you every day, he admitted, even if it meant keeping everything professional when I wanted more. Before Nancy could respond, Lily appeared, yawning widely. And Daddy, I am tired. Can we go home now? Can Nancy come too? I want to show her my new drawings. The moment shattered, but something had changed irrevocably. As they gathered their things and headed for the exit, Nancy felt Charles' hand tentatively seek hers when Lily wasn't looking. She intertwined her fingers with his, the simple touch sending sparks up her arm. We need to talk, he murmured as they reached his car. After Lily's asleep, Nancy nodded, not trusting her voice. The drive to Charles's house was quiet, with Lily dozing in the back seat and an expectant tension filling the space between the adults in the front. Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed with Sparkle curled up at her feet, the dog had become as attached to the little girl as to her owner. Nancy found herself on Charles's back patio. The night was warm, the garden illuminated by subtle landscape lighting that cast a gentle glow over the seating area. Wine, Charles offered, bringing 2 glasses and a bottle. Please. Nancy accepted a glass, taking a small sip to steady her nerves. Charles sat beside her on the cushioned bench, closer than professional boundaries would dictate, but still maintaining a careful few inches between them. "I've been trying to figure out what to say for months," he began. "How to tell you that you've become essential to me, to us, without making you feel pressured or uncomfortable." Nancy set down her wine glass. "I've been doing the same thing, trying not to cross lines, to keep things professional when all I could think about was—" She hesitated, then pressed on, "was how it would feel if you kissed me." Charles. Seth's eyes darkened. "And now that the children S line is launched and your position is secure, now that no one could possibly claim your success came from anything other than your own brilliant talent." "Now," Nancy said, finding courage she did not know she possessed, "I really wish you would kiss me." The remaining distance between them vanished as Charles gently cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers for any hesitation. Finding none, he lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that began tenderly but quickly deepened with 6 months of pent-up longing. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Charles rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you explained indigo farming to me at that first event." Nancy laughed softly. "That long? I've wanted you to do that since you got down on the floor to play tug-of-war with Sparkle." His thumbs traced gentle patterns on her cheeks. "I need you to know something. This us, it isn't tea casual for me. I don tea do casual. Not with Lily involved, not with my heart." His voice grew serious. "When Lisa died, I thought that part of my life was over. I focused entirely on Lily and Evergreen. I never expected to find someone who would fit so perfectly into both aspects of my life." "I never expected any of this," Nancy admitted. 6 months ago, I was a broke grad student about to be evicted. Now I have my dream job, and I'm falling in love with my boss, which breaks every professional rule in the book." Charles's eyes lit up at her words. "Falling in love." Nancy felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I did not mean to say that part out loud." "I'm glad you did," he replied, his smile warming her from the inside out. "Because I am falling in love with you too, Nancy Thompson. Possibly since the moment my mother texted me about a kind young woman who gave up her seat on the subway." From an upstairs window, Eleanor Harris watched the couple in the garden, a satisfied smile on her face. Beside her, Lily stood in her pajamas, Sparkle in her arms. "See, Grandma, I told you she was our princess," the little girl whispered. Epilogue. 1 year later, the rooftop garden of Evergreen Apparel S headquarters was transformed for a celebration. Strands of fairy lights twinkled overhead, and potted plants bursting with herbs and flowers, many of them dye plants from Nancy's original research, created a lush, fragrant paradise above the city. The occasion was twofold: the official launch of Evergreen S expanded Children S line, now including adaptive clothing for children with special needs, and the private celebration of Nancy and Charles' S engagement, announced just that morning to their closest friends and family. Nancy stood at the edge of the garden, looking out over the Austin skyline as twilight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her engagement ring, a vintage piece reset with ethically sourced stones, caught the light as she adjusted the prototype adaptive jacket a young model was wearing for the evening S presentation. "There you go, perfect," she told the child, who beamed up at her before running off to find his parents. As she straightened up, she felt familiar arms wrap you around her waist from behind. "Hiding from your own party," Charles murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Nancy leaned back against him, savoring the moment of quiet amidst the celebration. just taking it all in. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. Better get used to it, he replied, turning her in his arms to face him. The Thompson Harris Adaptive Collection is going to change lives. Nancy smiled at the name, her professional identity maintained alongside his, a partnership in every sense. Speaking of Thompson Harris, have you seen your daughter? She was supposed to be helping coordinate the junior models. Charles laughed. Our daughter is currently with my mother, charming potential investors with her detailed explanation of how the sensory-friendly fabrics work. She says, quite the saleswoman. The word "our" sent a warm glow through Nancy's heart. Lily had taken to calling her mom about 3 months after they officially started dating, and the adoption papers were being finalized alongside their wedding preparations. And Sparkle? Last seen accepting treats from your parents. Your dad is completely wrapped around her little paw. Nancy's parents had moved to Austin 2 months earlier, her father taking early retirement and her mother transferring to a local hospital for her nursing work. They had embraced Charles and Lily completely, filling a grandparent-shaped hole in the little girl's life, and providing the expanded family support that allowed both Nancy and Charles to pursue their demanding careers. There you two are, Eleanor T's voice called as she approached, elegant as always, in a dress from Evergreen's limited senior collection, another of Nancy's innovations. The photographer wants pictures of the design team before we lose the golden hour light. As they followed Eleanor back to the main gathering, Charles kept his arm around Nancy's waist. Happy? He asked quietly. Nancy thought about the journey that had brought her here, from that fateful subway ride to tonight's celebration, from struggling student to celebrated designer, from loneliness to this beautiful blended family. Beyond happy, she replied. Though I still cannot believe your mother's matchmaking works so perfectly. And never underestimate Eleanor Harris when she sets her mind to something, Charles said with a laugh. She knew what she was doing from the moment you offered her that seat. Well, remind me to thank her properly at the wedding, Nancy said, squeezing his hand, for seeing what we needed before we knew it ourselves. As they rejoined the party, Lily ran to meet them, Sparkle trotting at her heels, wearing a specially designed collar that matched the event's decor. Mom, Dad, Grandma says it is time for the big announcement. Nancy knelt down to Lily's level, straightening the prototype dress the girl had insisted on wearing, one with hidden pockets and adjustable features that made it perfect for active children. You remember what to do with the envelope? Lily nodded solemnly, clutching the sealed envelope that contained the ultrasound picture, their surprise announcement for the grandparents that their family would be expanding again in about 7 months. I wait until after you thank everyone, and then I say we have one more surprise and give this to all the grandparents at once. But perfect, Nancy said, dropping a kiss on the girl's forehead before standing to take Charles's outstretched hand. As they made their way to the small stage area, Nancy caught Eleanor's eye across the crowd. The older woman winked, a knowing smile playing across her lips as if to say she'd predicted this outcome all along. Perhaps she had. Sometimes, Nancy thought, the most beautiful designs weren't created on a drafting table or a sewing machine, but in the careful, loving hands of those who could see possibilities others missed, who could take disparate threads and weave them into something stronger and more beautiful than they had been alone. As Charles squeezed her hand and began to speak to their gathered friends and colleagues, Nancy silently thanked that crowded subway car, that moment of simple kindness that set this entire beautiful design in motion. The end.